Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Life Self-Mastery, and I'm excited to have Richard Bronson, who's the founder of 70 Million Jobs. Richard served as director of DeFi Ventures, which is an organization dedicated to providing incarcerated men and women second chances upon release. Before that, he was the co-founder of popular nostalgia website DoYouRemember.com. His career began on Wall Street, where he managed money at Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns. He eventually went on to found Biltmore Securities, a registered broker-dealer based in South Florida. Richard Group built more to nearly 500 employees, generating $100 million in annual revenue. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Hi, Rohit. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, you've had a long journey. I want to know, how did you get your first job, and why did you want to build 70 million jobs?
How did I get my first job, and why do I want to build 70 million jobs? Well, that's a difference of about 40 years.
Okay.
So to address your first question, I went to college to study journalism, and I always thought I would be a writer. So out of college, I, in fact, worked in that field at a very low level, and I quickly realized that if I wanted to make a lot of money, it was not going to be as a writer. My family had an import business, and it meant working with and for my father. So I did that for several years, but like most relationships between sons and fathers, at times it was stressful, and we drove each other a little crazy. I left that. I had a lot of friends and I knew a lot of people who were working on Wall Street. I'm from New York, and that's where I was living at the time. And I had lots of people I knew were making a great deal of money on Wall Street. This is during the 80s. And I was able to get a job, initially working at a large investment banking firm. I worked at a couple of different investment banking firms, and I discovered I was very good at the work, and it suited me personality-wise, but at a certain point, I thought, maybe there would be something else I'd like to do. But before I left the industry completely, I had a friend who was working at the infamous firm that was depicted in The Wolf of Wall Street, a small brokerage firm where I had heard about young men who had relatively little education, were making a ridiculous amount of money. So I said, I have to check this out because, with my background, I could probably do very well there. So I decided to take advantage of the opportunity to work there. And in short order, I too was making a great deal of money there. And eventually I became a partner in the firm. And I will tell you that that firm was every bit as crazy and fun as it was depicted on the film by Martin Scorsese. We took a lot of drugs, we spent a lot of money, we acted in a very embarrassing fashion in retrospect, but we never laughed so hard. I never laughed so hard in my life. I eventually left there to start my own firm that was very much based upon and modeled upon that firm. That was done in Florida. And we had a stunning amount of very quick success. We grew the company, as you mentioned. We ended up with about 500 employees within a couple of years. And we were doing about $100,000 in annual revenue. Unfortunately, like in the film, we were breaking some laws. Yeah. And while I would love to say that, we were innocent, or I was innocent, or we didn't know what we were doing, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew I was breaking the law. I made a decision to do it because I was stupid and greedy and impatient. and I paid the price because I was convicted of securities fraud, and rightfully I was sentenced to a 2-year prison sentence. It would have been a lot longer sentence had I not already paid everybody back every penny that we illegitimately were able to generate. We had a partner, and we both felt that not only was it the right thing to do, but we knew we were going to get in trouble one day, and it was probably would be in our interest to pay people back. So we did that. And in fact, it made for a lighter sentence than it would have been. So I went away to prison, and I was penniless because prior to going to prison, I gave away all the money I had, and I had substantial assets, but I gave it away to all the different charities because I was so disgusted with myself and ashamed, and I felt like, this is what money did to me. So I, thought it was a very dark time, needless to say. So I gave everything away. And when I came out of prison, I was completely penniless and homeless, which was quite a huge difference between my life before, which involved private jets and Ferraris and a very, luxurious, opulent lifestyle. When I got out of prison, at least I'm very happy to say I learned a lot about humility. It's impossible not to learn about humility when, you're scrubbing the toilets for 100 people.
Right.
So I came out of prison penniless, but a changed person. And it took me a while, though, to figure out what to do with my life. And it was very, very hard. Friends that I thought were friends had disappeared, and business opportunities completely dried up. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with me, which I understand. But I was lucky. I eventually, after a few years, found a home working at a nonprofit that is in the reentry space, as you mentioned, Defy Ventures. And that was really very, very satisfying work. And I was able to do good things, that I felt that were karmically in my interest. I studied Buddhism, and I'm very, very much concerned about, the implications of my past behavior and what that means for my future, and to do whatever I can do to try to settle the balance a little bit, So I felt like I was doing that, but I couldn't help but know that despite our best efforts of this well-intentioned nonprofit, and many like it, we weren't really accomplishing a lot. Unemployment among the formerly incarcerated has never been higher in the United States. And that's in an environment where for the rest of the company, unemployment has never been lower. But for this population, it's almost 30%. And, it was clear to me we were sort of losing the war. And unemployment for this population generally results in recidivism. People are rearrested if they don't have a job. So I thought there was a better way to do it. I thought if we could do it, utilizing technology, if we could do it on a national level, and if we could do it a lot more aggressively than it had been done before, maybe we could make a big difference. So I left my nonprofit job and I launched 70 Million Jobs in New York. And as you mentioned, almost immediately, Y Combinator reached out to me. Y Combinator is the internationally preeminent early stage investor and accelerator program that's
Right.
based in Silicon Valley, as you know. And that was a great experience. And at the end of it, I was able to raise the funds, seed round, to begin building my business.
Interesting. I love the transparency where you talk about what had happened during the brokerage firm that you were running. And, I've done my MBA, and then I got into a broking firm myself. And then 2 years after doing this retail broking thing, I got tired and got into startups. But nevertheless, uh, uh, what would be the learning for somebody, who's trying to build their own companies and trying to build their careers, and what are the what would the advice would you give to millennials or Gen Zs who want to grow fast? uh, you know it, there's a lot of pressure in tech industries as well in financial industries to get those sort of profits or margins. What advice would you give to young people who are around 25 years old? We have seen in 2008 how the subprime mortgage crisis had happened, and these sort of things keep on happening after every 5 or 10 years. What
Yeah.
advice would you give to them?
I'm frequently asked that question, and I do have thoughts on it. Certainly that are informed by my personal experiences, lessons I've learned the hard way. My overriding piece of advice is that people should pursue their dreams, their biggest dreams, with ardor and passion, and to a certain extent, suspend logic, when they're making these decisions. The startup world in general, as you know, is a very, very, very chancy, path to take, where, very few startups actually, are successful. And, if you were to look at the sort of the statistics, and if you judged your behavior, if you use those to make your behavior, you would probably say, I'm not crazy. There's, it's like playing the lottery. Yeah, if it happens, it'll be great, but almost no one ever wins. So, that's why parents are put on this earth, to tell their kids not to do crazy stuff like that. But I believe, that there are certain people, and I always felt connected to it, were sort of born with this feeling that exists somewhere within them, that there's a special reason why they were put on this earth, that there's perhaps greatness in them, that they're capable of it, that there's a destiny that awaits them. And to me, the only difference between people who achieve that destiny and the people who don't are the ones that achieve it at a particular moment in their life, sort of suspended logic, and said, I'm going to go for it. The pitch comes in. I'm going to use a baseball reference. That might not be, everybody knows what baseball is, I guess. You can try to get on base with a single, which is conservative, or you can try to hit a home run and win the game. I always looked upon trying to hit the home run. My feeling was, well, why not me? I'm as good as anybody else. And if someone else could do it, why can't I do it? Which may be bad logic, but nonetheless, it's been behind all the decisions that I make. So I tell people in general, first of all, to go for it, to take a deep breath and take a chance, because truly very few things are going to kill you. And, there's rarely that one decision that's going to, make your life so awful, that there's no going back. So I tell people that if you believe you are that sort of person, you have to just follow that impulse and do it. But I also tell people that there will always be temptation to take shortcuts, temptation to lie, to cheat, to, figure out and game the system. And it may make sense, and it may be successful today, and it may be successful tomorrow and the next day, but ultimately it won't be successful. Either you will get caught, and when you're caught, it's never worth it. Never, ever, ever worth it. And it wasn't worth it for me. I used to make $10 and $20 million a year, and I went away to prison for 2 years. And some people would say, well, that would be worth it. I would do that, but it wasn't worth it for me, because not a day goes by that I don't feel ashamed and sad of the decisions that I made and the pain I caused other people in my family particularly, who loved me, who had to sort of bear that shame as well. So, what I have discovered, and maybe a lot of people know this all along, but I discovered that if I approach things honestly, with an open heart and transparently, things always seem to come out right. Often in ways that I didn't expect or anticipate, but in general, my life has improved immeasurably when I just sort of say all the things that I'm afraid to say and share and ashamed of. If I say them, I feel better for it, and other people seem to respond well to it. They appreciate it, and they're more on my side. So in a way, my advice is sort of conflicting. I say, take a chance, go for it, make that, try to hit that home run. But when you're doing it, do it honestly, and don't cheat, and don't, lie about it, and try to, do it with a pure good heart. And if you do that, I believe you'll have very, very good outcomes. So those are my two pieces of advice.
No, I absolutely agree on this. It's important to go swing for the fences, but it's important to also be honest about it. Coming back to 70 million jobs, are there really 70 million people who are convicted and who can't find jobs, or is it they got some sort of a police record, and it becomes difficult for them to get a job in US?
Well, in the U.S., I don't know about other countries, but almost every company now will subject a job candidate to a background check. And the background check will, identify people who have had, legal problems in the past. And every company, and certainly every large company, have hiring parameters in which they will hire certain types of people with certain backgrounds, and they won't with other backgrounds. And it doesn't matter if they think the world of the person. If they committed this crime and it appears on the background check, then they're just not going to hire them. They can't do it. Their legal department won't let them. The CEO won't let them, whatever. It just can't happen. In the United States, we, as a country, we have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated population. And our criminal justice system in many ways is worse than in China or North Korea or Russia or Afghanistan, or places that you would think would have the worst of the worst. We have the worst of the worst. The way we treat our prison people who are incarcerated, the length of their sentences, on and on and on. And in many countries, you serve your time, you do your sentence, you come out, and then, okay, I made a mistake. I'm going to get on with my life. I want to lead a productive life going forward. We don't even let people do that. It's, in a sense, people serve a lifetime sentence that they can't get out of. So there are 70 million people in this country, 1 in 3 adults, which is a spectacular, stunning statistic. 1 in 3 adults have a record in the United States. And they all have this stigma, and they all have a problem getting a job. So we try to help them. We can't help everybody, because, as I mentioned, certain people have backgrounds that almost no company will tolerate. And, we approach this as a for-profit thing. So, we choose to get involved with people that we actually think we can help. It doesn't matter what we think about them. If no company wants to help them, that's not a basis for a business, obviously. So we work with people who have this stigma, who we believe we can help get a job. And we work with some of the largest companies in the country. We have about 11 million people with records in our community. And we've been successful in a short time in getting thousands of them jobs. So, we're very, very proud of that, but we're really proud to have the opportunity to work with these folks. For the most part, people with criminal records didn't wake up and say, I want to commit a crime. You know, they were born into a situation where it was all around them, and maybe family members were involved, and there were few other options. Where the way I was brought up, and I don't have any of these excuses at all, I was brought up in an environment that assumed I would go to college and I would lead a productive, successful life. But the people that we work with that has nothing to do with the world they grew up in. You know, it was much, much worse. Probably both parents weren't around. Maybe neither parents were around. And the only signs of success that they saw, whereas I saw people who were driving Porsches and going to work on Wall Street, they saw people on the street selling drugs who were successful, and that was their role model. And insofar as they didn't see any other opportunity, that's what they pursued. You know, who knows? They could have been Mark Zuckerberg in a different environment.
Absolutely.
But, you know, these people, after serving their time, they come out, all they want to do is start over their life. Give me a chance. I'm going to work hard. I'll do my best. That's the way most of them are. And it breaks my heart when, you know, I see people who have good intentions who just have the door slammed in their face over and over and over and over. You know, so the opportunity to help them, I feel me and my team feel very, very fortunate, and we feel better, you know, for knowing them and seeing how they deal with their adversity.
So Richard, I wanted to understand, are there other competitors in your field as well? I think there are a lot of other non-profit companies who are trying to solve the same problem. So are there other competitors also, the same startups who are trying to solve the same problem?
Not to my knowledge, no. You know, I'm often asked, particularly by investors, who my competitors are.
Right.
And certainly there are many, many large, successful companies that operate job boards. The biggest one is Indeed, which is an international company. And there are many, many billion-dollar staffing companies out there.
Right.
And, you know, if we had to compete with them directly, that would certainly be a challenge. But we are the only one that focuses entirely on the population we serve, the formerly incarcerated. Now, there are many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofit organizations and community organizations that help people who are newly released from jail or prison. And they, as part of the support that they provide, they try to help them find jobs. Number one, these organizations, and I at one time was involved with managing one of them, an organization called Defy Ventures, which was a wonderful organization, you know, that I loved working at. But these organizations typically only work with people who have just been released. And in the United States, there's about 650,000 people that are released from jails or prisons annually, as opposed to the 70 million or so people who were released 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, who all have the same stigma, the same problems that anybody else has with having a criminal record. If a background check is done on them, and almost all companies in the United States do perform background checks, they will get that same red flag that someone who just came out received. So we don't focus on people who have just been released. We are more focused on those who've been out for a few years, because if they've been out for a few years, they've had the opportunity to establish that they're serious about their reentry. And if they've avoided getting in trouble, that really makes them exceptional. And those are the people that we feel, you know, that we can sort of pin our businesses future on making bets on them. Nonprofits are generally also local in nature, and because they're local, they typically work with local employers. As opposed to our approach, we have a national footprint, so we generally are working with large national employers who, of Walmart, for example. Now, we don't work with them, but Walmart has 5,000 stores in the United States, and they're interested in hiring solutions across the United States, not just in one store. So my goal, and why I left the nonprofit world, is I don't want to be operating locally with a small number of available positions. I want to operate nationally, and I want companies that can give us thousands, 10,000 jobs, because to me, that's how we really create the greatest amount of impact, and also how I build a big successful business.
No, absolutely makes sense. If you can scale it nationally, even internationally, that's where the big money is. And I wanted to understand, what are your customer acquisition channels? How are you getting people on board for both of your products, which is like the job board and the staffing? How are you making sure that the right number of customers are being seen on your portal?
When you say our customers, since we have a two-sided marketplace, we really have two customers. Okay. We have job seekers on one side, and we have we have employers on the other side who have the jobs. So, as I think I mentioned, we have millions of job seekers already in our community, and we acquire them mostly because all of these organizations around the country send their people to us, or they send people to us who went through their program 5 years ago, because they know that there's a very good chance that the individual is unemployed or underemployed. There's a high likelihood of that too. But I think you were really asking from the employer side or the demand side, how do we do it? Right. And we do it a number of different ways. We do outbound marketing of a variety of methods. We do ongoing email campaigns or drip campaigns where we send a series of targeted emails. We send messages to voicemail. We follow up with phone calls. So that's one channel. We advertise on Facebook, and we advertise on LinkedIn, and we're going to be doing advertising on Google with AdWords. So that's another channel. We, of course, do SEO to drive inbound lead generation. And we do other lead gen approaches. We do content marketing. We do a lot of social media stuff. And I do a lot of public speaking at events, at conferences, and certainly a bunch of podcasts like yours today. And so these are just, a bunch of different things that we do. It's hard for me to know how effective, if we're doing a good job, because on the one hand, it's hard enough to generate leads. Enterprise clients are hard to land in general for any startup. But we have the additional challenge that there's so much negative bias about hiring the formerly incarcerated. And so much of the bias is not based upon fact, but it's based upon very old, sort of biases and racism and, that are not based in fact or evidence at all. Now that's changing and it's moving quickly, but it's still very much out there. So there are times when I feel like, my God, we're doing a terrible job with our marketing. And then other times I feel like, my God, nobody could be doing more than us, because given the challenges of the space that we're in. The compensation, or the only, what we do have going for us, as I mentioned, is we're at least not competing with others, or at least currently. So we never, almost never are we in discussions regarding pricing, for example. That's never the issue. The issue is the company ready to take on these people with their backgrounds? And because they definitely need people, and they have jobs that need to be filled, so that the need is there. The biggest issue is selling them on that this makes good business sense for them.
Got it. And one of the most interesting things about the company is that you've been able to raise more than $1 million of funding from some key investors like Founders Fund and Y Combinator. In fact, what really impressed me is that even at more than 30 years of experience, you got into Y Combinator and you were accepted, and you also managed to get funding from Founders Fund. How did you manage to look into Y Combinator as a part of them grooming you, and how was the experience at Y Combinator?
Well, the experience at Y Combinator was amazing. It was great. And I urge any company anywhere in the world at any stage they're in to apply.
Okay.
Because they have done and helped me and my business so much. When I launched my company, quite frankly, I knew very, very, very little about the fundraising process.
Right.
I had no idea how you work. Excuse me, let me turn that off. I had no idea how you work with professional investors like VC firms or even angel investors. I had no idea how a round works. I had no idea about pricing. I had no idea about the different securities that you could employ to raise the money with, and the laws that surround them. I really didn't know what I was doing. And it's complicated and confusing from the outside. And it almost seems sort of like, it's a work of art, but not science to understand it. But in fact, there is a logic, there is a procedure, and going through Y Combinator definitely cleared up a lot of that mystery. It also provided a huge amount of credibility, whereby there was, a social credibility that, if Y Combinator accepted you, then that therefore on that basis alone, meant that you were credible and worthy of attention. Y Combinator receives, thousands and thousands of applications, and it's a very tiny percentage of companies that they accept. So the feeling generally is these people know what they're doing, and if they've accepted you, that must mean you've got something going on. I often jokingly will say that going through Y Combinator, it made me feel like I was a made man in Silicon Valley. And I don't know if you know what that expression refers to, but it's, if you get accepted into the mafia, you become a made man. You're one of us and you're part of the club. And that was the same as it relates to being a tech startup. You became part of the club. So Y Combinator is a 3-month program that occurs. They do it online to some extent. They have the summer classes that they're providing now, and lots of companies are participating remotely. But the actual main program takes place in Mountain View, California, which is in Silicon Valley. And it ends by their demo day, where pretty much every company that goes through the program in that batch, as they call them, presents their company in person to an audience of pretty much every important venture capital firm that's out there, and those who aren't in attendance are watching it online. And it's a very valuable invitation to a VC firm to come there. They feel like they have to be there because companies like Airbnb and Reddit and Dropbox and Stripe and, so many others have gone through the program. They have 20 or 30 unicorn companies in their portfolio already. So, if you're an investor, you got to be there. You can't miss out. And they create this level of excitement and demand, and it's all around. So you get that fear of missing out, that FOMO effect occurs. So that when I did my pitch, as I was getting off the stage after giving my 3-minute demo day pitch, I already had people texting me on my phone telling me how much they wanted to commit to my raise. So that was pretty amazing, and frankly, I became spoiled from that. I thought this is easy and I'll never have trouble raising money again. Of course, over time, the excitement sort of, wears out, and then there's a new batch of companies coming in, and they're getting the attention and all the excitement. So, but as I say, I encourage everybody to apply. Y Combinator travels throughout the world to set up times to meet with founders. And some people think I'm too early or I'm too late or whatever. And there's no too at all. They have taken all sorts of people. They had someone in my batch. These were high school kids who were like 15 years old, who cold called at the time the president of Y Combinator, whose name was Sam Altman.
Yeah.
And they got him on the phone and they pitched him on their company. And he invited them to come to Mountain View to meet, and they were accepted in the program while they were still in high school.
No.
So it's never too early, it's never too late. And, they take all different types of companies. They're looking for exceptional founders, people who are bright, who have a lively imagination, people who, want to learn from their marketplace and are not sort of, don't have a huge ego that they know best. I gained so much wisdom from them. I could go on and on and on. People say, is it worth it? I would have paid them rather than them investing in me, because it was that worth it.
No, absolutely. Y Combinator gives a sort of credibility, which is like they're almost like the Harvard and Stanford of entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Yeah. You also using a crowdfunding platform like Republic to raise funding. So why go through a crowdfunding platform? Why not raise funds
For
from
a couple
VC
of reasons. First of all, money is money, and
Right.
as a founder, the most important thing is to do the things you need to do to keep your company alive and to grow it. And so you do whatever it takes. Obviously that's legal and moral, but anything that's out there that you can do, any opportunity that's out there to advance your company's future, it's your obligation to do. And, we'll end up raising a couple of $100,000 through this crowd fund at the valuation that we think is fair.
Right.
And it did not require a great deal of work for us. So why not? So that's one reason. The other reason is that, typically the investors that you get through a crowdfund are smaller investors. They're certainly not VC firms. VC firms don't invest in crowdfunding. They invest directly because they're writing, large checks. But we have lots and lots of people who really believe in our mission and want to participate. And for them, it's almost not an investment, it's more of a donation, because they're more concerned about our mission. and that resonates with them. And they want to help, and they believe that what we're doing is important work, and they want to participate. So through this current crowdfund, we have already something like 500 investors.
Right.
Now, thank God they all get grouped together and they appear on our cap table as one investor. But
Right.
still, it means that 500 smaller investors, people who maybe don't have a lot of money, they wanted to participate because it was important to them and they believe in it. And I am really, really appreciative of them, and I'm moved by them. And I, want them to be involved, and I want their support. It makes me and my team feel great that so many people have that kind of belief. And you never know where that goes. We've had other large investors who have heard about us through the crowdfund. We've had other people who had connections who can help us in other ways that they know, for example, employers that could work with us, or they knew politicians or whatever. You never know, but it gives you a platform, it gives you exposure.
Right.
And as long as it's not so much work, as long as it's not taking away from the other things that we need to do, to me, it's a no-brainer. And, as long as you're working with a good, reputable company, they have their investors who have gotten involved. So overall, it's been a very good experience. And, is it easier to have three big investors write big checks? Of course. But there's something that, for our very strong mission-based company, that's very right about all this.
Correct. And what is the money to be used for when you raise the money from the crowdfunding platform?
Specifically, we will be building out our sales side, which are people who will be calling the companies. Again, we have a two-sided marketplace. So on one side, we have job seekers, and again, we have more than 11 million of them. And those come to us in large number, and it doesn't cost us almost anything to acquire them. We need to have, in a two-sided marketplace, you want to match up, both sides, the supply and the demand. And it's always which comes first, the chicken or the egg? That's the famous reference when you're dealing in a marketplace business. In our marketplace, not only do we have to make sure that we have the right number of supply and demand, so that they balance each other out, but in our case, the jobs have, our marketplace is also very geographically specific. In other words, the jobs, we have to have the right number, and they have to be in the right location. It's no good if we have jobs somewhere, if we had 1 million jobs, in Hawaii, and we only had 100 job seekers there, and most of them were in Michigan or New York or California, the jobs in Hawaii wouldn't be any good. There wouldn't be any help.
Right.
So it's tricky. It's not the easiest business, certainly, but that also is a barrier to entry. It creates a moat. It makes it harder for other competitors to come in if you've been able to figure it out.
Makes sense. So I, quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
Sorry, my favorite business book?
That's right.
Boy, that's a tough question. I can't. Some people are, big, readers of business books. I don't know, that I would be one of them, quite frankly. There's one book that I think is really great, and it's by Peter Thiel.
0 to 1.
Sorry?
0 to 1?
Yes, exactly. And
Right.
and he talks very extensively about marketplace businesses.
Right.
And he talks about, how important it is in a marketplace business to figure out, where you can operate in a relative monopoly. and whereby you never have to compete on price.
Right.
And, the best businesses are able to find that space. And I've always looked very, very closely at that and, aspired to that. So I would say, pretty much among all the business books I've ever read, that would be the best one.
Right. And, if you could go back in time when you started working on 70 million jobs, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
That's an interesting question. What would I have done? Well, something. I mean, I as someone who has had a life of lots of ups and downs, someone, I used to be rich and famous, and then I was poor and in prison.
Right.
I certainly have a lot of events that I can look back upon and wonder would I have done them differently. But generally speaking, and people always ask me, what would you have done differently in your life in general? And, my feeling is that anything you did, right or wrong, has been the reason why you are where you are today. And that all that matters is here and now. And I believe in that. I believe that, mistakes that you made are often the things that you learn the most from. And yet sometimes making mistakes are very painful.
Correct.
So I don't believe that there's much to be gained by going over, regret. I do believe, that the mistakes that I've made are the times where I failed to pursue something. There's the old sports saying, that, and how does it go? It's the shots that you never take are the ones that you regret, not the shots that you miss.
Right.
I wish that we had gotten into the staffing business right away rather than the job board business, because the staffing has really taken off and the job board not so much.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot through that, experience and that challenge. So, I don't spend my life spending a lot of time in regret. All I try to do is bring as much awareness to right now. I know you're supposed to be planning for the future, but there's an old Yiddish expression, I believe, that goes something like, man plans and God laughs.
Right.
If my life has shown me anything, if I've gotten any wisdom, is that I have no idea what the future will bring, and it's never what I expect it to be. So, what I believe is honest and true is that if I approach now with as much honesty and openness and transparency and love that I possibly, can have, and that, believe me, for me, that's a real challenge. But if I can do that, it seems that that's all that ever really matters.
That's a great advice. And do you have any favorite online tools? Example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, any online tool which you prefer?
We use Slack.
Okay.
Here. I am 65 years old.
Right.
So, most apps on the UI or UX are not designed for people like me.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I once spoke at Google, which is also in Mountain, California, to 200 of their product managers talking about user experience. And I yelled at them. I told them that so much of their UI and UX is so bad, it's only good for very young people. But then I realized they know that's who they care about. I don't have that many more years on this planet. So as a consumer, as a buyer, I have limited appeal. It's far more important that they build things that someone who's 15 or 20 years old, who's going to use their products for many, many, many decades to come, that's who they have to appeal to. So I get that. Sometimes it bothers me, but I do get it. So I don't love anything particularly. I mean, you know what I love the most?
Yeah.
I have a terrible sense of direction. I love Google Maps.
I love Google Maps.
Because I feel fearless now when I get in the car and decide to go somewhere. Otherwise, I would have to pull out a map and plan every turn. And I have the worst sense of direction. So Google Maps has saved my life.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. What is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about 70 million jobs?
Two ways. My email, which I give out freely, is richard@70millionjobs.com. The number 70, and then the word million, and then the word jobs, JOBS.com. We are also running a campaign, as you mentioned, on Republic, a crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
And we would love the support of anybody who believes that people deserve a second chance and who believe that employment is really the silver bullet, the key to getting people to lead productive lives and to leave their past lives of committing crimes behind. So that's at republic.co, republic.co, and then on that page, on that landing page, you'll find our specific page that you could click through to. So we'd love to have that support as well.
So, I'll also put that in the show notes. Thank you, Richard, for coming onto the show. I was really inspired by your journey, that how you're trying to solve this big problem, and you're full of life. And I love that, you're building something so amazing at this time. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
And thank you so much for having me. The best part of my job is getting to talk to people who also have a big heart, and you clearly do. So thank you for your help and continued success in everything you do.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.